This week's vocabulary class focused on Greek words and phrases. Previously, we've spoken a lot about Latin roots, but a lot of our day-to-day vocabulary actually derives from Greek words as well, so we focused on that this week. Now, before we get into Greek words, we're going to discuss Greek idioms. But before we do that, let's figure out exactly what an idiom is and a proverb, just because those are often confused. So an idiom is a saying or expression that means something different to the words in it. For example, it's raining cats and dogs. When we say it's raining cats and dogs, that just means it's raining a lot. It's not literally raining cats and dogs. They're not coming down from the sky. So an idiom doesn't relate exactly to the words in it, but we just know the meaning from using it in general conversation. The way I remember what an idiom is I think that these phrases would be idiotic if they were real. So it would be idiotic if cats and dogs were coming down from the sky. It would be stupid. So that's how I can remember what an idiom is. Proverbs are popular words of wisdom expressed in a clever or brief manner. Unlike idioms, proverbs will be full sentences. For example, absence makes the heart grow fonder is a proverb. It gives you kind of advice in a succinct way. As I said, though, we are going to focus on idioms today, and they're idioms that derive from Greek myths. Now, first of all, I need to just explain the meaning of a couple of words and phrases for you so that you fully understand the meanings of these idioms. So vulnerable means able to be hurt or injured, or open to attack or danger. An example sentence would be, pangolins are killed for their scales and meat, which makes them vulnerable to extinction. So they're open to the danger of extinction in that case. An ulterior motive. Now, these are two words that are just often used together for a particular meaning. So I wanted to introduce the actual phrase here. So ulterior motive. It's a reason for doing something that is not shown to others. As an example sentence, you may have, my brother is only nice to me when he has an ulterior motive. So in that case, your brother would have a secret reason for doing something that perhaps you're not aware of. So maybe he's being nice because he's planning on a prank later, or he's being nice so that your parents will see it and they'll give him something that he wants. So an ulterior motive is when someone's plotting something and they've got a reason for doing things, but on the surface it may seem like they're just doing it to be nice. So you have to beware of people that you think may have an ulterior motive because they could be trying to trick you. Okay, now we've done those definitions, let's get into the Greek idioms. Now, my pupils in the vocabulary class were asked to watch a couple of videos on Greek myths to give them an idea of what these phrases might mean. So I'm going to put in the description the videos that are recommended, and then you can watch those after this video if you'd like to get more detail on these phrases. So a Herculean task. Hercules was a demigod in Greek myths. So a demigod, I'll write it here, demi is has the same meaning as semi. So they both mean half. So Hercules was a demigod. He was half god, half mortal, or half god, half human. He completed the 12 labours. He was set a task to complete 12 labours that were considered impossible. He had to battle monsters and go on long expeditions to complete these challenges. But even though everyone thought these challenges were impossible, Hercules managed to complete them, which is where we get the phrase a Herculean task. So a Herculean task describes an activity that is very hard to perform or complete, just like the 12 labours were hard to perform or complete. You might say, getting this project done in the next 2 days seems like a Herculean task, for example. Okay. Now, our second one, beware of Greeks bearing gifts. This phrase comes from the story of the Trojan War. Now, the Trojans and the Greeks had been at war for 10 years, and eventually the Greeks had an idea to bring a gift of a giant horse to the Trojans. They delivered it outside the walls of Troy, And then the Trojans, thinking that it was a peace offering and perhaps a victory trophy, brought the horse within their walls. When they did so, the Greeks climbed out of the horse and attacked the Trojans, therefore winning the war. So, although it looked like the Greeks had come to be nice and to give a gift, actually they were up to something. You may say they had an ulterior motive. So, the meaning of beware of Greeks bearing gifts is do not trust enemies that are being friendly, as they may have an ulterior motive. The next idiom is Achilles' heel. Achilles was given invincibility, so he was unable to be harmed in any way. However, when he was given the gift of invincibility, his heel was missed, so his whole body was indestructible apart from his heel. When we use the phrase Achilles' heel these days, it's referred to as the area in which you are weak, even though you might be strong elsewhere. So your Achilles' heel is a point of weakness, and that goes with a weakness that may lead to your eventual downfall. Now, the Midas touch comes from the story of a king who wished for the ability to make gold out of everything he touched. Now, this backfired, but I won't go into the whole story. You'll have to go and watch that if you want more details. But the phrase the Midas touch means the ability to make money out of anything. So one of my pupils suggested that perhaps Simon Cowell had the Midas touch, and I'm sure he's been referred to as having the Midas touch previously. So he is someone where it seems like every time he creates a pop band or every show he's on, it just makes lots of money. And finally, we have Pandora's box. This comes from the story of Pandora, who was given a box from the gods, but she was told not to open it. When she did open it, because she was curious, she released all of the evils in the world. So hunger, poverty, jealousy, everything bad was stored in that box, and she opened it and let it out to spread across the world. So Pandora's box refers to starting something that leads to many unexpected problems. Now we've got some roots and prefixes that derive from Greek, and we need to match them up with their meanings. So tele, the first one, that is used in words that you will know like telephone and television. Now, telephone and televisions allow you to see and hear things that are far away. So tele means far. A telescope allows you to see things that are far away. Phone, as in telephone, relates to sound. So like I said, it's far and sound, so sound that comes from far away. You can also have phone in microphone, megaphone, and homophone, which we'll come back to later. Okay, gram and graph mean the same thing. They both go with written or drawn. So when you hear graph, think about drawing a graph, and that might help you. Pathos goes with feelings. You probably don't know that many pathos words, but you'll have heard of pathetic, and so that derives from pathos, meaning feeling. So when someone's pathetic, they're worthy of feeling from you. You feel something for them. And finally, we have nym, meaning name. Now, you may remember previously I mentioned pseudonyms. Pseudo meaning fake, so fake, name. You can also have homonyms, synonyms, antonyms, and we'll come back to some of those definitions in a minute. Now we're going to discuss a few words that relate to the roots that I have just highlighted. The first one is telepathy. I'll show you the spelling in just a second, and I would recommend writing this down at home to help you to remember. For example, the twins insisted that they were able to communicate telepathically, even when they were in different cities. So remember, tele means far, and, tele means far, and pathy relates to pathos, which meant feelings. So telepathy is the ability to feel someone else's feelings and feel their thoughts from far away. So telepathy, communication between minds without gestures or signals. Now, if you need a second to write these down, just pause the video and then you can play when you're ready. Okay, the next word is teleport. This is another superpower, although telepathy, some people do actually insist that they're telepathic, though you'll have to judge for yourself whether you believe that. Now, teleport is another superpower, and port means to carry. So when you teleport yourself, you carry yourself, you port yourself far away. That's where the tele comes in. So to teleport is the ability to instantly transport oneself to another location. Next up, we have pseudonym, which I've mentioned a couple of times. Pseudonym is a false name used to hide a person's identity. Remember, pseudo means false, nym means name, false name. Next, we have homonym. Now, we often in English talk about homonyms, homophones, and homographs. It can be tricky to remember which one's which, but if you remember the Greek roots, then that will definitely help. So homonym comes from homo meaning same, and then nym meaning name. So it's two words that have the same name. Now what that means in practice is that the words are not only spelt the same, but said the same. So just think if you have the same name as someone else, your names are said the same and they're spelt the same. So homonym, words that are spelt or pronounced the same but have different meanings. For example, mean would be a homonym, has different meanings. Address, bark, manipulate, which is in another of our vocab classes, manipulate, and expedition, which again is in another vocab class. Those are all homonyms. You say them in one way, you spell them in one way, but they have different meanings. Next, we have cacophony. Now, cacophony, the first part comes from kakos, meaning bad, and phony meant sound. So a cacophony is a horrible mix of sounds. By contrast, we have a symphony. Sim means together. So it's sounds played together, usually beautifully. So a symphony is a musical piece written for an orchestra to play, but you may also use it to describe just some lovely sounds. Perhaps the bird song was a symphony to you, so a beautiful mixture of sounds, almost like an orchestra. Next, we have homophone. Remember, homo meant same and phone meant sound. So homophones are two words that sound the same but are spelt differently. Try and come up with some examples of homophones. For example, you may have no and no. There are lots though, so maybe make a list now or try and look out for some during the course of this week. Then we have homograph. Now remember, graph was to do with writing and drawing, and homo still means same. So homographs are words that are spelt the same, but they sound different and have different meanings. For example, advocate can also be said as advocate. So to advocate is the verb and advocate is the noun. So same spelling, said differently, and they mean different things. Now an autograph, auto means self, and graph meant writing. So it's when you write your own signature. So it's a signature, especially a celebrity's, or it means to sign something. We usually use the noun version, so the N is for noun, V is for verb there. And finally, graphic. Graph was to do with writing and drawing. Graphic means either relating to pictures or writing, or described clearly and vividly. If you're a graphic designer, you design things relating to pictures and drawings. When remembering that graphic means described clearly and vividly, you might want to think about drawing a picture with your words. So a graphic description would be almost too realistic. You can imagine the picture when someone describes it. So for example, the soldier gave a graphic account of the battle. Sometimes a graphic description might be gory and disgusting, so you wouldn't really want too graphic a description because it might put you off whatever you were doing, might make you feel a bit sick. Now that you know a few words relating to writing and sound, let's move on to feelings finally. Now we have 3 words that relate to feelings here, and we're going to use the prefixes to help us to decode them. So sympathy, you might have heard of before. Remember, sym meaning together. Apathy has the prefix a meaning without. For example, asymmetrical, when you add that prefix on, it means it's not symmetrical. So apathy is without feeling, and we'll come back to that. And then M, we've discussed previously. Hopefully you remember that that means in. So in feelings. Now let's try and figure out what that means in practice. So sympathy is when you feel something with someone else. So if they're sad, you feel bad for them. So let's have the definition here. It's the feeling of pity or sadness for a person that is sad or in pain. So feeling bad for someone else, sympathy. Apathy. I'll give you an example sentence here. Young people are often accused of being apathetic about politics. So apathy, we said a meant without, and then pathy meant feeling. So you're without feelings. You don't care one way or another. It's not that you dislike something. It's not that you like it. You're just in the middle, not caring about it. So apathy is a lack of interest or feeling. And then indifference would be a synonym of it, so meaning the same thing. A lack of interest or feeling, indifference. And finally, we have empathy. I think of empathy as a very strong version of sympathy. So sympathy, you feel bad for someone because you see that they're in pain. Empathy is the feeling of experiencing the same pain that someone else is feeling. So when you see someone hurt, you almost feel hurt yourself. You feel a physical pain, like their feelings are in you. So the definition of empathy is sharing another's feelings or attitudes. So it's a strong version of sympathy. Most people will feel sympathy when they see someone that's in trouble, but some people will feel empathy. They know what it is to feel that same emotion. Now that is all we have for this week's vocab class. Go back through this video, make sure you've written down the definitions, and then also have a look at some of our other videos on how you can revise this vocabulary so you remember it in the long term. I'd also recommend writing a few sentences with the words that we've covered in today's session. If you want to learn even more vocabulary, then our weekly live sessions might be for you. We'll cover all of these words and more, go through example sentences, closed tests, and synonyms in an hour to make sure that you remember all of these words in the long term. If you'd like to join us, just visit kinlearning.com. Don't forget as well that if you've enjoyed this video, please give us a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to be told as soon as more of these videos are uploaded. Have a great week and keep learning.